Do you ever feel like you're the only person in the room willing to push back on a bad idea? Do you get that unsettling feeling that some of your colleagues will agree to anything just to move something forward, just to shine? Well, we're going to dive deeper into that danger zone. That zone is called the world of the yes men in the workplace. But what is a yes man? Well, it's someone who habitually agrees with their superiors, often without critical thinking or offering alternative perspectives. See, it's someone who prioritizes pleasing others above all else. Now, another way I like to accurately describe it is that the yes man is a potential threat to the entire decision making process. Now, they might seem harmless enough, maybe even helpful in the short term. But you see, the long term consequences, they can be devastating. Now, there was a LinkedIn article that I read from Farmer State, and they emphasize that the yes man in an organization can be a dangerous element, leading to poor decision making, lack of innovation, and ultimately failure. So, in essence, because they did make a good point, yes men create an echo chamber, stifling creativity, innovation, and ultimately honest feedback. So, what are the dangers of yes men then if this is what they do? Well, first of all, poor decision making. When everyone agrees with the boss, regardless of the idea's merit, flawed strategies get rubber stamped. That's what happens. Now, just think of some scenarios. What about if marketing, for example, decided to launch a campaign that had a questionable celebrity endorsing it? Or what if the technology department or engineering chose the cheapest vendor, even though their quality was suspect? Well, we all know the term cheapness does bring dearness after all. See, these situations could have been avoided if we just had a little bit of healthy dissent. Second, stifled innovation. Now, the best ideas normally do come from challenging the status quo. You see, yes men, they ultimately shut down that process. See, no one speaks up to voice ideas because they're basically too busy trying to agree with the loudest person in the room or the most senior to make that point. Third, the erosion of trust. Now, eventually, people will realize that yes men aren't really being that genuine. And what that creates, we talked about this a few videos ago, is the opposite of radical candor, which is a communicational framework that is designed to help bring out the best and most positive and productive outcomes. You see, what this breeds ultimately is resentment and distrust within the team. So, why trust someone who isn't being truthful about feedback? What if what you thought of as an idea as a leader really was rubbish, right? And finally, missed opportunities. Your company might miss chances to improve its products, its services, internal processes if you're not open to criticism and instead encourage a culture of compliance. But let's illustrate what that means. Let's imagine a hypothetical company called Innovate Solutions. Now, their CEO, Sarah, she's brilliant, but she also loves to be right. Now, she proposes a new product line, smart socks with built-in GPS. Now, a few of her direct reports, eager to please, immediately sing its praises. Hey, brilliant, Sarah, groundbreaking. This is exactly what the market needs. Now, there's one brave soul, an employee named David. Now, he cautiously raises concerns. He says, "Oh, Sarah, I admire your creative thinking and you are the boss, but is this really aligned with our core business? I mean, we have no experience in wearable technology, and market research suggests limited demand." Well, how would Sarah respond? Well, Sarah's annoyed. She brushes off his concerns. And then the yes men, they jump in to support her. They say, "David, you're not seeing the bigger picture here. This is going to revolutionize the industry. I know we're in a completely different industry. We make food, but hey, now fast forward a year. Innovate Solutions, they lost millions on unsold smart socks. David's feeling vindicated, but he also feels frustrated and he decides to leave the company. Now, the yes men remain, of course. They're nodding along to the next bad idea. Now, of course, I'm not mocking any real company that exists out there that does sell smart socks with built-in GPS or anything else that is similar. The point is whilst fictional, this highlights the real-world dangers of unchecked agreement. It's important to remember that becoming a yes man isn't always a conscious choice. Sometimes it's an unconscious choice. Now, the Ivy Tech website, they had an article that points out several factors that can contribute to fear of conflict, desire for approval, or lack of confidence. Now, just think about this for a second. Now, you're new to the company, you've just joined, and you're eager to impress your boss. Now, you agree with everything they say at the beginning, of course, right? Because you're hoping it will build a positive rapport between you and the boss. Or maybe you've just been burnt in the past. But here's the truth. In the long run, being a yes man hurts you as much as it does the company. You see, you sacrifice your own integrity. You stifle your creativity and ultimately become a less valuable member of the team. Now, let's shift our focus to leadership and how we can apply it there. Now, leaders or aspiring leaders who surround themselves with yes men are doing themselves a massive disservice. And this applies to anyone who has recently been appointed to lead a small team. And you're now given the budget for the first time to recruit someone into your team, right? If you're recruiting a yes man, someone who's just like you, you're doing yourself a disservice as well. But let's explain. You see, as a leader, your job isn't to be right all the time. It's to make the best decisions possible with the information you have and has been presented to you. And that requires diverse perspectives, honest feedback, and constructive criticism. You see, leaders who actively seek out dissenting opinions create a culture of psychological safety. Now, this is where employees they feel comfortable in sharing their ideas, even if those ideas challenge the status quo. Now, again, aspiring leaders, we're talking to you now. And this includes anyone who recently has been appointed to lead a team. The ability to listen, to empathize, to incorporate feedback. See, these are the hallmarks of true leadership. I remember myself as well. This was a process of learning that I had to go through in order to continue to try and be better at what I do. And to be honest, I'm still in school. We're still learning, so to speak, because you never stop learning because people are different. And so you're learning how to work with different ones, whether that's ones with different opinions, different perspectives, and different approaches. There's always something to learn. Now, this brings us to Simon Sinek's brilliant take on optimists versus pessimists. But why do I say that? Just because this can have a massive positive impact on the diverse perspectives that are around you. Now, Sinek, he describes the differences between working pessimists and sideline pessimists. Sideline pessimists are the complainers. They are the naysayers, the ones who offer basically no solutions. You know, they sit on the sidelines criticizing everything. I mean, those are negative people ultimately, and they are just there to complain. Cynic also mentioned it in a slightly different way. Sometimes those people just lob grenades into the center of the room and they see who loses a limb, figuratively speaking. But it's still quite real and realistic as an example. Now, working pessimists, on the other hand, they are critical thinkers. Now, these are people who identify potential problems and they offer constructive solutions. So they're not afraid to point out the flaws, but when they do so, they want to do so with the intention of trying to make things better. So they are problem solvers. They're thinking of ways to solve the problem that they've just pointed out. Now, Sink's point, though, is that a working pessimist is a much more valuable asset than a sideline one. You see, they challenge assumptions, they identify risk, they help us to avoid costly mistakes. Now, as Simon Sinek illustrates as well, he says, imagine planning a trip. And let's say they will go to the beach. It's going to be amazing, right? So the optimist people will say this. But a working pessimist will say, well, if we're going to the beach and everyone wants to go and enjoy themselves, that's great. But if it's sunny outside, what about sunscreen? What about the weather forecast? And what if we get caught in traffic? Should we leave a bit earlier so we can factor that in? So, solutions. So, by considering the potential problems you may have before you leave, you can mitigate the risk and ensure a more enjoyable trip ultimately. That's what that illustration was trying to make as a point. So, allow me to relate to you an experience. I remember working at a previous organization. This is years ago. Now, they were a heritage organization and they had newly appointed a CEO. And he called all of the senior leadership, he called all the department heads, team leaders, newly promoted team leaders as well, all to the floor for an open meeting. And everyone was wondering, well, what is he going to say? Well, he addressed the floor with his verbal, welcoming himself and said all nice, positive things. But then he concluded with some really choice words. He said, my door is always open, and I'm serious when I ask and challenge anyone to feel free to come to me and tell me any problem that you're having that affects your ability to deliver within your area of expertise, because what you do will contribute to the goals we have as an organization. Now, as I listened, I thought, well, this sounds good, right? And he seems really sincere. But then he said, but if coming, also come with a suggested solution of how you would solve it. Now, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is new. But what he was doing was excellent. He wasn't about to turn into some agony aunt. What he was doing was challenging all of us, everyone in that room, the department heads, the leaders, the team leaders, and so on, to develop critical thinking. And really, that's what Simon Sinek was saying. This does happen in reality. The CEO appeared to be cognizant of the different types of characteristics that can live within people, even leaders, and what he wanted to value the diverse suggestions that he potentially had at his fingertips. So, how do we foster this kind of varied thought perspective in the office? Well, first, encourage open communication. Create a safe space where employees will feel comfortable sharing their ideas regardless of their position or seniority. Second, actively solicit feedback. Don't just ask, does everyone have any questions? Because that's not really asking for feedback. Ask, what are potential downsides of this plan? Or is there anything we haven't considered? Is there anything you think that I might be missing from my approach or idea? Third, reward critical thinking. See, it's important to recognize and appreciate employees who challenge the status quo and offer constructive solutions. Fourth, hire for diversity of thought. You see, don't just surround yourself with people who think like you. Seek out individuals with different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. See, this is what's going to really bring up the quality and bulletproof your idea. All right, let's recap. Yes men stifle innovation and lead to poor decision making. Becoming a yes man hurts both you and the organization you work for. Leaders should actively seek out dissenting opinions. This is where the value is. This is where the gold is. Working pessimists are a valuable asset who identify potential problems and offer constructive solutions. Try to foster open communication, solicit feedback, and reward critical thinking, as well as hire for diversity of thought. Now, are you willing to dare to disagree? The next time you're in a meeting and everyone's nodding along like bobbleheads, just remember this. The greatest progress comes from daring to disagree. It's not about being difficult, it's about being better. So don't let yes men derail your team if you're a leader. Embrace the power of diverse perspectives. Watch your organization thrive. Thanks for watching. Stay present, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.